Let's go to today's Take 3. Three of us share our takes on the three stories catching our attention and yours. Where else could we begin but with election night last night? Curious, Savannah, you were there covering it. Natalie, you were looking at this pretty closely.
Probably.
Yes, she was here.
So exhausted.
I'm not responsible for what comes out of my mouth at this point.
Natalie, what jumped out for you?
I think what I loved watching and what really, I think, made the biggest impression last night is we all realized this over the course of the election, but how much the landscape has changed. I mean, everybody said it over and over again. The Latino vote last night made a huge difference. Remember back in the day we talked about the soccer mom being all the difference? Well, here is the football mommy. Really went out and made the difference.
Coined the term there.
7 out of 10 Latinos voted for President Obama. And if you look at, I mean, it really shows you the minorities are now the majority. 9 out of 10 who are black voted for President Obama. 59% of young people, so the youth vote made a huge difference. And single women, 2/3 of them voted for President Obama as well. I mean, I think it says a lot, and you spoke about this last night, how much the Republican Party has to connect.
Something that they'll be
thinking about how they're going to find and make that connection with these groups.
The white portion of the electorate has shrunk as it has every year. Now it's 72%. And then you saw, as you mentioned, that President Obama ran up huge margins with non-white voters. And you look at a state like Nevada, I think it's 1 in 7 voters is Latino. Nevada has one of the worst economies. I think it has the highest unemployment rate in the country. Foreclosure. It's basically an economic basket case. And yet the incumbent is able to prevail, and a lot of people will be looking at that and saying that's the effect of the Latino vote.
And smart Republican strategists have already come to terms with this. They had before this election, especially so this morning, some of them saying today that Texas, within 8 years, could turn into a swing state, one that Republicans have taken for granted. 38 electoral votes, but with the rising Latino population, that suddenly could go into that column of swing states. So
Republican Ted Cruz, by the way, won the Senate last night.
And I know, there you go. By the way, of all the things to come out of this important election night last night, I'm stunned to see what you zeroed in on here, Savannah.
Well, to use Brian Williams' term from last night, weed. Marijuana is now legal.
That's not Brian Williams' term.
No, he did.
People say that.
No, I know. But I mean, that was one of the funnier moments.
Funny.
He said, let's put it plainly. Let's talk about weed. Okay, Colorado was the first state to legalize marijuana without a prescription. Washington State also legalized it. Now, of course, Massachusetts approved pot for medical reasons. I have to say it's a little complicated because federal law, of course, still forbids it. Governor Hickenlooper in Colorado, who won last night, had a funny statement. He said, the voters have spoken. We have to respect their will. This will be a complicated process, but we intend to follow through. That said, federal law still says marijuana is an illegal drug, so don't break out the Cheetos or Goldfish too quickly. That's why I bring it up.
Munchies. That's a great tweet. That probably takes the prize for tweets.
In a related story, Savannah just purchased a second home in Colorado, which I think it's a ski home. Right?
That was my favorite exchange last night is when Lester Holt said, oh, yeah, it's a good night for pot smokers. And Brian Williams said, let's keep your personal life out of this, as if Lester would.
Got a little punchy there.
For me, some of the enduring images of yesterday were the lines. A lot of us stood in lines to wait for vote. We saw lines as long as 6 hours across the country. You had no line?
I actually was disappointed. I'm like, where's the line? I should be waiting in a long line.
Well, I thought two things when I looked at these. One, how great is it that we still live in a country where people will wait 6 hours to cast a single vote in an election? And number two, how in the era of the iPhone and the iPad are we still standing in 6-hour lines? There has to be a better way. I know there are complications with electronic voting, concerns about fraud, but there's got to be a better way than waiting 6 hours and having your name looked up in a phone book before you go into a booth.
And what's amazing to me is the areas that were ravaged by Sandy. I mean, it seemed like they had the process down in a lot of the areas, whereas in some areas here in New York City, some of the voting poll area, they didn't have it down, and they had huge lines, and they weren't even affected by the hurricanes. So,
well, let's get to our take two. Twitter talk. This is the photo of the president hugging the first lady. The words 4 more years has been retweeted. It was nearly 500,000 times. And then let us show you this. There's a before-after image of the Obama family, then and now, and it has gone viral, too. We got that picture to show you.
Well, what's amazing, I think, is just seeing how much the girls have grown up in this time. This is the before picture. This is 4 years ago. And then now, look at them. I mean, Malia is almost as tall as Michelle. And Sasha, they're just, gorgeous and beautiful and growing up so nicely.
And the president's got a bit more gray hair.
And what I liked about that, Michelle, obviously everybody looks at what she's wearing. So last night, of course, everybody's like, what is she wearing? And Interesting to note she's wearing a recycled dress, meaning one that she's worn many times over now. I think she wore it at a 2009 event and then a 2010 holiday party, spreading them. It's a Michael Kors dress, so she's recycling her dresses again, being very careful with the message of, you know, the economy is still struggling, so she's wearing that dress to stick to that message.
And you got to say quickly, looking at that picture, they've done such a good job keeping those girls out of the
so
spotlight and
grounded.
giving them as normal a life as you possibly could.
We're so blabby today that we are going to call this Take Two. Because we didn't get
just
to
two.
take 3 or the bonus take, but
Blame
we'll
Savannah
be back here me.
and all the weed talk.
It was worth it, though, right? Okay. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.